Think about the last time you held a baby. You knew exactly where that baby came from. The mother was obvious. The father was obvious. The biology was just common knowledge, absorbed so early in life that you cannot remember learning it. But for most of human history, half of that equation was completely invisible. The mother was always certain. She carried the baby. She gave birth. The connection was physical and immediate and impossible to deny. The father was a mystery, not a cultural mystery, not a religious mystery, a genuine, unsolved, nobody has figured this out yet mystery. And the world your ancestors lived in, the families they built, the rules they made, the gods they worshipped, was shaped entirely by that missing piece. When they finally found it, nothing was ever the same. Go back 300,000 years. Your ancestors are fully human. Same brain, same intelligence, same capacity for language and memory and complex thought. They're not primitive. They simply live in a world with far less accumulated knowledge than the one you inherited. They understand cause and effect for almost everything. Drop a rock, it falls. Touch fire, it burns. Eat the wrong berries, you get sick. These connections are fast and direct and impossible to miss. Pregnancy is none of those things. A woman becomes pregnant and 9 months later a baby appears. 9 months. In a world with no calendars, no way to track time precisely, and 9 months is an eternity. The human brain is extraordinarily good at connecting events that happen close together. It is simply not designed to connect a single night to something that appears nearly a year later. So the connection wasn't made. Women had babies. It was mysterious and powerful and sacred. Life emerged from women the way seasons emerged from the earth, cyclically, naturally, without any obvious external cause. Men were essential to the group in 100 ways, but contributing to the creation of new life? That idea hadn't been formed yet. Anthropologists studying this period point to something that feels almost impossible from where we stand today. There are groups documented as recently as the 20th century with no concept of biological paternity. The anthropologist Bronisław Malinowski documented communities that believed pregnancy was caused by ancestral spirits entering a woman's body. These weren't unusual or isolated people. They were humans operating on the same logic that all humans used before a very specific set of observations changed everything. Those observations didn't come from watching humans. They came from watching animals. As groups began spending more time near animals, observing them, occasionally controlling them, beginning the slow process we now call domestication, patterns became visible that were impossible to see in human populations. You could separate animals, keep males away from females for months, then bring them back. The results were consistent every single time. No males meant no offspring. Males present meant offspring appeared. Goats, cattle, horses, every species, same result. Research on the origins of paternity knowledge consistently points to this period, roughly 10 to 15,000 years ago, as the turning point, the moment when humans could finally see in animals what they couldn't see in themselves. And then someone made the leap. You are living through this transition. You have watched your animals long enough to understand the connection. One evening, sitting close to a fire with someone older than anyone else you know, you say the thing that has been forming in your mind for months. What if it works the same way for us? The fire crackles. The night is quiet. She doesn't look surprised. Some researchers believe women arrived at this understanding before men did, not because of any difference in intelligence, because of direct access to evidence. Who experiences pregnancy from the inside? Who tracks the physical changes, the timing, the cycles with an intimacy no outside observer could match? In small, isolated groups where a woman spent extended time with only one partner, the pattern would have been clearest. And the people with the clearest view of that pattern were the women living it. This knowledge in that world had enormous weight. Knowing which man contributed to which child, in a world where men competed for status and resources, was information with real consequences. It determined who protected a woman and her children, who provided for them, who treated them as personally connected to himself. But knowledge that's significant never stays private forever. When it became widely understood, when the connection between men and the creation of children became something the whole group accepted, the effect was total. Men suddenly had something they had never had before: a biological stake in specific children, not the group's children, their children, connected to them by blood in a way that was now understood and real, and that created a question that had never existed before in the entire history of the human species. How do I know which children are mine? It is impossible to overstate how completely this question changed everything. Before it existed, social structures flowed through women. Resources, lineage, identity, all traced through the maternal line because the maternal line was the only one that was certain. Children belonged to their mothers and to the group. Men invested in all children communally. There was no legitimate or illegitimate, no inheritance to protect. After this question existed, none of that held. If a man's biological connection to a child was real and significant, that connection needed to be protected, made certain. And the only way to create certainty in a world without DNA testing was to control the conditions under which conception happened. This is where marriage comes from. Not from romance, from paternity certainty. A public agreement that this woman and this man were exclusively partnered, so that any children she bore were unambiguously his. This is where the concept of female chastity as something socially valuable originated. A woman who had been with only one man produced children whose paternity was certain. That certainty had concrete economic and social value. This is where inheritance through the male line began. Once a man knew which children were his, he had reason to ensure those specific children received what he had built. Researchers across anthropology, evolutionary biology, and history consistently identify this as one of the most significant transitions in human social organization. Not a war, not a climate disaster, not a technological breakthrough. A piece of knowledge spreading from group to group, restructuring everything it touched. The world before this knowledge was genuinely different. Archaeological evidence from pre-agricultural societies shows far greater gender equality than what came after. Female figures worshipped as deities, resources distributed based on need, social status flowing through mothers, evidence of communal child-rearing where the group collectively bore responsibility for children's survival. That world did not disappear because it was worse. It disappeared because the new knowledge changed the logic entirely. Once men understood their biological connection to specific children, the incentives that held the old system together simply stopped working. The new system had real advantages too. Fathers who knew their children were theirs invested deeply in those children. Stable family units created the conditions for agriculture. A man and woman building something across generations to pass to their specific descendants. The stability this created allowed civilizations to accumulate knowledge at a pace that wasn't possible before. But the costs were real and lasting. The control that paternity certainty required did not fall equally on everyone. It became embedded in law and religion and culture so thoroughly that it stopped looking like a response to a specific problem and started looking like natural order.